My name's Mikey Rockwell, and I'm on a quest to make games. I've published 2 games so far, Potions and His House Hoos, and now it's time to make my 3rd game, and this time I'm documenting the journey. But the big question is, what to make? Games can take years of work, so I want to make sure I'm heading down a good road if it's going to be a long road. My first instinct was to jump into a big RPG project that I'd been thinking about for a while. But ultimately, I was focusing on the wrong things, getting distracted from what the core of the game actually was. After watching a great vid by Jonas Tarola, I decided to scale things back and spend some time making small prototypes and then pick from a group of ideas, rather than just running with the first thing that came to mind. To get the ball rolling with something small and relatively simple, I thought of combining the old school classic roguelike gameplay of Angband, my favorite game of all time, with the scale of its great-great-grandson, Vampire Survivors. My idea was to bring back the strategic turn-based gameplay from the old times, distilled down to pure combat.
And I took a bolt of nether to the nether regions, and here we are.
For this prototype, I'm using the Unity game engine. I've used it for 2 complete games, and I can work quickly with it, but that doesn't mean to say I'm not open to other avenues in the future. This time, it's all important to document every step of the way, and hopefully share that with you so you can come on the journey with me, and if I do end up making something worthwhile, you know about it before it's finished. And I also maybe forgot to record the first 10 days of that roguelike project. So here's a reenactment of what happened. I opened a brand new Unity project and got to work on building a basic grid system. Next, it was time to add the player as a classic @ symbol and write a little code to make the player be able to move around the grid with the keys or mouse, and add some monsters that would just path towards the player. Then I added a really budget pathfinding system that just said if a monster couldn't move into the square it wanted to, it would look for the next best square. Then a little combat, you could move into the square of the enemy and they could move into your square and you'd do damage to one another. Now we needed some ways to kill waves of enemies, so I added some basic abilities, a dash attack, a slash attack, and a classic old magic missile. I wasn't worried about code quality or clean code or architecture or anything. I just wanted to get something playable as soon as possible. Current state of the prototype. So you can move with the mouse or the number keys. You can attack enemies, but you don't do much damage. So there's a magic missile, there's a targeting system. If it's going through an enemy, it'll target the one. So if I do this, it'll shoot that one. This is like a slash. There's this dash ability that will dash through, and you can't land on an enemy, but you can dash through to this range here and you'll do damage. There's a blink spell at the moment that just moves you randomly. So the backpack right now just has these 3 hotbar items because I've only got 2 items that I've created, but if you throw the flask of oil, it'll create oil tiles, and then if you throw the torch, it'll light the oil tiles and damage enemies. These lines show the lines where the enemies can spawn, always outside the camera relative to where the player is. They leave a trail behind them of a white or a pink line, and a pink line basically means they've moved erratically. What I want to do before I call this prototype kind of done, add some more items, add weapons, and then author a bunch of enemies. Basic enemies, I mean, they're probably not going to have abilities at this stage, and a way for the player to scale, so maybe leveling, and I want to get all that done by sort of 2 weeks if possible. ////. Okay. Carrying on day 10, I added walls that would spawn randomly across the map, and then I had to tackle the problem of speed, which in a real-time game, characters can move at different speeds, but in a turn-based game, I needed a system that would give everybody action points that they would spend on moving or attacking, and then if they didn't have enough action points, they couldn't move, and if they had extra action points, they could take more than one move. Oh, I'm flashing red. Does that mean I'm running out of juice? Decoupling the camera from power. Decoupling. And coupling the camera, the thing to the power. Fast forwarding another couple days where I forgot to record what I was doing, I had added items that would randomly spawn in a dungeon, health potions, teleport scrolls, and even weapons that you could equip. I'd also added these experience pickups that would fly towards you a la Vampire Survivors. Next up were spawn waves, so I could author different waves of enemies of different types and what turn they spawned on. That way you could kind of orchestrate the level as it ramped up and more difficult enemies were spawned and came to kill you. Even though you could collect experience crystals and level up, it didn't really do anything at this point, so I added these buttons to level up abilities, which would make them deal more damage or have more range. Things were starting to come together and I could playtest the game now and get a feel for the challenge of it, how you scale versus how the enemies scale, and just a general rough prototype. Pretty happy with where this was in the first 2 weeks. I was still feeling very rusty, but it was really good to shake off the cobwebs with a project like this and just get things underway. And right from the start, I promised myself no art, we're just making prototypes and systems. But after 14 days of just straight programming and looking at these grey images, I broke down and went to Open Game Art and found some free tiles, the dungeon, crawl, stone, soup tiles to be exact. It really gave the game a lot of flavor. Seeing it with the tiles made it feel a lot more alive, and I was pretty much there with a few more tweaks to where the prototype was done and ready to ship. More like ready to put on the shelf, because this was the whole point of this process, was to make a prototype, not get too attached to it. I was already getting attached to this game, but to be able to step back, put it in a pile and say, okay, let's make some other stuff and see where we get to. And at the end of a period of prototyping, we'll go back in and we'll decide what is the game we really want to make out of these prototypes, if any. While this may not be the most exciting or innovative game ever made, it was a good way to get the ball rolling. Now I felt like I had a little momentum, my brain was cooking up ideas. This led me to my next idea, which I was really pumped to just get straight into and start making another prototype with the same idea of just hashing things out really quickly. On the next episode of trying to figure out what game to make, I get straight into my next prototype. I figure out just how easily I can bring the Unity engine to its knees with bad practices. 5, 4...
No!
And I get way too involved with this game and spend way too much time on art and systems, as per usual. See you in the next one. My name's Mikey Rockwell, and I'm making games.